we teamed up with 4 by Design for a bumper for our Collider Wagon Chevy build. We're doing like a modern day tow rig, recovery rig, hauling rig, whatever. It's a multi-use vehicle. And I'm used to building Jeeps and everything and whatnot, and I wanted a bumper that was sleek looking, it looked good, and I wanted a winch mount on it also, but I wanted it to be super tough, and I wanted it to look good on the old square body. Now the problem that I had was I got on the internet and I searched, and a lot of the bumpers out there today make the square body look a little weird. They're just trying to fit a modern bumper on an old truck and just don't look right. So I come across these guys, and to be honest with you, they are super friendly, super helpful. They just seem like down-to-earth people, and we teamed up together with a partnership, and they sent out this bumper that they made here. It's a new design, the Delta, and it's a do-it-yourself kit. Now, I've done tons of these kits in the past for Jeeps, all kinds of stuff. I'm used to doing these kits. They're really, simple, honestly. If you have a welder and a good table, you can put one of these bad boys together. We've been going back and forth for months on building this thing, and this is what they come up with. And honestly, here we go again with other companies. I'm not bashing, I'm just saying what sets apart 4 by Design with other companies. He said he sent me the instructions in the email, and I expected, just some basic, instructions to throw this bumper together. It's super detailed. It gets down to the point where to weld it at. The instructions are super, super in detail, and honestly, if you're just getting into welding and putting stuff together, that would be great instructions for you. I looked over them a couple times. The bumper is straightforward, but I love a company that stands behind their product and wants you to put it together the way they designed it to, right? So, they're friendly. The instructions are super in detail. You don't have to do a whole lot of reworking or bending with this particular bumper. Most of it's bent for you. Like we have plates. This is bent. These plates here are already bent for you. Most bumpers that I get, that I put together, a lot of times I have to find the angle and all that stuff. And what's good about this is you have to do a little bit of finding the angle, but what's good about it, everything's already bent up and it looks pretty self-explanatory. Make sure you go check out 4 by Design, order up some stuff, even get a hold of them and see what they can do for you. So let's go ahead and get into building this bumper. I'm going to show you how to build this bumper, and then we're going to throw it on the Chevy and show you what it looks like. All right, the first thing I like to do is go ahead and lay everything out and clamp it together somewhat to get an idea of what's going on, to make sure the pieces are all here, to make sure everything is flush. If I have to do any kind of grinding, which we will have to do some grinding on these pieces, because I like to bevel the edges so I can get a deeper weld, but we're going to follow the instructions. But I just like to do this to see what goes where, make sure everything's here, all the pieces fit real nice. Do I have to do any trimming, grinding, or anything like that? And it looks like everything is lining up the way it should. All right, first thing we got to do is put the frame mounting tabs on both sides. So we're going to go ahead and stick it on here on the side. Make sure you put it the right way. The slot facing up right here, and the bolt hole in the back. And we're going to use a square to make sure everything's square. A lot of people use magnets too, but I like to hold it and use a square, and if I have to tweak it, I can tap it. But I've been doing this for a while, so I just go ahead and use a square, hold it, and tack it. I'm usually right on the money with it. So we got it where we want it. I'm going to tack it in place. There's a little slit on the slot on the side. You just go ahead and tack weld it. Then we make sure it's square. I always double check to make sure everything is square, because this needs to be all straight and everything needs to line up. So we're going to flip it over, and we're going to go ahead and tack the other side on, pretty much repeating what we just done. I move it over here, to where it's a little bit more sturdy. And again, I am using a square to make sure everything is perfect. And as you see, I'm going up and down to make sure it's all square. There's no gaps, nothing sideways. I just do this to be sure. I'd rather do this now and then have a crooked bumper in the future when everything's welded together. So double check your work, make sure nothing has moved, especially when you tack it, make sure it hasn't pulled or anything. But we're not really putting a whole lot of heat in it, so it's not really going to move on us. But it's just good practice to tack weld things and make sure they're square. I'm going to make sure everything's square, everything's together on each side. So I'm going to double check again to be sure. As you can see, it is all square. Don't have a problem. Square. Everything is perfect. So let's move on to the next step. So now we got to put our triangle pieces in, which you can get these confused. So make sure you measure which side goes on what. So the bottom that goes on the plate will be 7 1/4. So I flip it over here and I make sure it is 7 1/4. It's right on the money. You can get these confused, so make sure you double check. So this goes just like this. 7 1/4 flat side goes down against the plate. You can flip it upside down like this, and it is wrong, and you can get confused. So it goes like this. So make sure you double check that, triple check it, and don't get confused. Again, I'm stressing making sure everything is square and perfect. Everything is lined up because, like I said, at the end you don't want to have a bunch of problems. So just make sure everything's square. And I'm kind of old school when it comes to stuff like this, but I'm measuring this plate again to be sure I don't get confused. And I always check the bottom too to see if it's the same. You really don't have to, but I'm just picky that way. To make sure it comes out the same. Make sure I got it welded in the same place. Again, using the square, holding it. And if you get it out of a square a little bit, it's just tack welds. Like I said, you can peck it back into place. But I'm going to go ahead and check it again. So we got to go ahead and put our wings on. That's what I call them, the bumper wings. And this should fall right into place. If you've done everything right, the little notches should fall right into place. So you shouldn't have any problem with this little notch going into place unless you welded it wrong. So make sure that notch goes in that hole. So make sure, double check, make sure it goes down in there because you don't want it to be crooked. So we're going to go ahead and tack weld it right here on this little notch. Then we're going to go here in the corner and tack weld it right here. Then we're going to go back in here and tack weld this also. So it's pretty self-explanatory. So now we're going to do the other side. So we're going to go ahead and tack that on the other wing. Get a little tack weld back here. A little tack weld here first. Then we'll go to the back. So now we can stick our gussets on, which this is super easy. So there are 2 of them. They go right here in these slots, right here. I'm just checking them, making sure they fit good. Squaring them up, tacking them in. Going to do the other side. Tacking it in. Once you start building this bumper, it actually starts going pretty quick, actually. So I got those tacked in. Going to go ahead and tack the little slots on the front. There's little holes there that sticks through. I'm going to tack those real quick. So now we're going to weld in our tabs for our winch mount. Now, I'm going to test fit these to make sure they fit right. Make sure they go down in the slots. This you want to make sure you do right because it can mess you up in the future.
So you need to grab a tape measure and make sure center to center a hole, it's 10 inches, because that's what a winch mount is. So make sure it's 10 inches center to center in the hole, because if you weld these crooked, you're not going to be able to get your winch on. So going to go ahead and tack it in place. Pretty confident holding it there. Going to go ahead and tack the other one in place while nothing has moved. I'm going to tack it down here. Tack it over here. And then I'm going to double check to make sure nothing has moved. And it's right on the money. Make sure you do the top. It's right on the money. Now the frame plates that we put on earlier, go ahead and weld the slots. Go ahead and weld them fully. And after you get them welded, grind them down because it'll help you in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and weld them in because you need it solid because it's about to get covered up. So I did both sides and I went ahead and grinded down the welds. And then we're going to go ahead and put the bumper plates on, the wing plates I like to call it. This actually fits really well. It's bent perfect. Honestly, if you have everything straight and square, this should line right up no problem. I didn't have any issue whatsoever putting this piece on at all. So I went ahead and stuck it on there and it lined up very well. I tacked it in place. We're going to have two little bent pieces, one bigger one and one little one. And as you can see, they're right here. We're going to have those for both sides. You want to start with the little one first. And it went right in. It lined up perfect. So I went ahead and tacked it into place. Like I said, I haven't had a problem at all with this kit yet. And then we go ahead and put the corner piece on. Go ahead and tack it into place. I'm doing the same exact thing that I did on the other side, on this side. This side come together very well also.
So the next thing you got to do now is go ahead and follow the instructions. You have to weld it all up. So what you want to do is you want to go in sections, okay? So if you're going to weld over here, weld a little bit over here, weld a little bit over here, and then stop. And then weld a little bit in the center and take a break. So the instructions, it tells you what to weld, how to weld it. And after we finish welding the bumper all together, the last step is the bow shackle mounts, which we'll do that last, and I'll show you how that works. I got a little trick on how to center up the holes too.
It may seem like I'm doing a lot of welding in this video right here, but I'm really not. I'm only welding a little bit at a time. I'll weld one side, go to the other, maybe do a little bit in the middle, and I'll go take a break. So make sure you don't just start welding on it. Make sure you take the breaks that you need to let this thing cool down so everything stays straight and nothing tweaks. So the little trick I use is a little bit of tape around a 5/8 socket. I go ahead and put the bow shackle mounts up there. I run that 5/8 socket in there with that tape on it, and that keeps the holes aligned while I tack weld the mounts on the bumper.
So just a friendly reminder, I went ahead and beveled the edges of these bow shackle mounts. That way I can lay a bead in there real nice, so it lays in there nice and flat. I did the same thing with the bumper corner pieces. I beveled them a little bit. That way the welds lay down in there, and when you grind it down, the weld went down in there deep. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, follow the instructions and you won't have a problem. So we got everything pretty much welded up. We got to finish welding the bow shackle mounts. I showed you how to do that. I can sit here and video me welding all day on this thing. Checked everything, everything's true. Followed the instructions to a T. I even took a lot of breaks. When I'd go over here, I'd weld a little bit. I'd go over here and weld a little bit. Maybe do a little bit in the middle, and I'd go take about a half-hour break. It's pretty cool out here today. I just got to finish welding these up right here. I'm just going to go ahead and burn that in real quick, and this bumper is pretty much done. When I was starting to tack everything together, before I started really laying beads, I would walk out to the truck, test fit it, lay some beads, and to the point I felt comfortable, and it slides right onto the truck. I just tested it after all the welding that we have done so far. It still slides right onto the truck, no problem. I just like double checking things to make sure everything works. So the only thing left to do is grind down all the welds to make the bumper look good. We got everything welded up, everything is grinded down. We got the bumper off the old Chevy. So what we're gonna do is clean up this bumper with some acetone, and we're gonna go ahead and get it painted. So I wanted to go ahead and mount it up one more time before I painted it to make sure everything lined up and where I want it. Make sure, I can just put it on there and bolt it. That way I'm not pounding on it or anything. You want it to go straight on, no problems. So everything lines up, even the fangs are perfect. The only thing that I had to do with this truck is because I do believe it was tweaked a good bit. I had to loosen up the core support, take the grill out, and shift it